Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterates his government's stated policy that talks and terror cannot go hand in hand. Says Operation Sindoor now normal in India's fight against terrorism. Consensus reached on restoring peace in DGMO level talks between India and Pakistan. Both sides to consider immediate measures while life limping back to normalcy at border towns of India. Hamas releases last living U.S. Israeli hostage Aiden Alexander in an effort to reach ceasefire in Gaza. U.S. President Trump is on a historic tour of the Gulf nations, reaches Saudi Arabia, talks on oil, trade and Russia-Ukraine crisis on the table. Iran warns Europeans of irreversible consequences after U.S. announces new sanctions over its nuclear program. Operation Sindoor, that smashed terror infrastructure in Pakistan, was not just an operation but a doctrinal change and a policy against terror, Prime Minister Narendra Modi in an address to the nation said. He spoke about Operation Sindoor, a precision strike conducted by the Indian Armed Forces on terror sites in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The strikes were carried out after the Pahalgam terror attack, which claimed the lives of 26 people.
पाकिस्तान की तैयारी सीमा पर वार की थी, लेकिन भारत ने पाकिस्तान के सीने पर वार कर दिया। भारत के ड्रोन्स, भारत की मिसाइलों ने सटीकता के साथ हमला किया। पाकिस्तानी वायुसेना के उन एयरबेस को नुकसान पहुंचाया, जिस पर पाकिस्तान को बहुत घमंड था। भारत ने पहले 3 दिनों में ही पाकिस्तान को इतना तबाह कर दिया, जिसका उसे अंदाजा भी नहीं था। इसलिए भारत की आक्रामक कार्रवाई के बाद पाकिस्तान बचने के रास्ते खोजने लगा। पाकिस्तान दुनिया भर में तनाव कम करने के लिए गुहार लगा रहा था।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that Operation Sindoor has proved the efficiency of made in India defense equipment and also India as a self-sufficient military power. Prime Minister said that the country has proved its dominance in modern warfare and must now lead in defense innovation through homegrown technology.
हम भारत और अपने नागरिकों को किसी भी खतरे से बचाने के लिए लगातार निर्णायक कदम उठाते रहेंगे। साथियों, युद्ध के मैदान पर हमने हर बार पाकिस्तान को धूल चटाई है और इस बार ऑपरेशन सिंदूर ने नया आयाम जोड़ा है। हमने रेगिस्तानों और पहाड़ों में अपनी क्षमता का शानदार प्रदर्शन किया और साथ ही न्यू एज वॉरफेयर में भी अपनी श्रेष्ठता सिद्ध की। इस ऑपरेशन के दौरान हमारे मेड इन इंडिया हथियारों की प्रामाणिकता सिद्ध हुई। आज दुनिया देख रही है 21वीं सदी के वॉरफेयर में मेड इन इंडिया डिफेंस इक्विपमेंट्स, इसका समय आ चुका है।
In his address, Prime Minister Modi said that many terrorist leaders were roaming freely in Pakistan for the last to 3 decades who used to conspire against India.
आतंक के बहुत सारे आका बीते 2.5-3 दशकों से खुलेआम पाकिस्तान में घूम रहे थे, जो भारत के खिलाफ साजिशें करते थे। उन्हें भारत ने एक झटके में खत्म कर दिया। साथियों, भारत की इस कार्रवाई से पाकिस्तान घोर निराशा में गिर गया था, हताशा में गिर गया था, बौखला गया था। और इसी बौखलाहट में उसने एक और दुस्साहस किया। आतंक पर भारत की कार्रवाई का साथ देने के बजाय पाकिस्तान ने भारत पर ही हमला करना शुरू कर दिया।
Prime Minister Modi, in his address, also saluted the valor of the Indian armed forces, intelligence agencies and scientists involved in Operation Sindoor.
हम सभी ने बीते दिनों में देश का सामर्थ्य और उसका संयम दोनों देखा है। मैं सबसे पहले भारत की पराक्रमी सेनाओं को, सशस्त्र बलों को, हमारी खुफिया एजेंसियों को, हमारे वैज्ञानिकों को, हर भारतवासी की तरफ से सैल्यूट करता हूं। हमारे वीर सैनिकों ने ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के लक्ष्यों की प्राप्ति के लिए असीम शौर्य का प्रदर्शन किया।
While speaking about Operation Sindoor, Prime Minister said that the operation has set a new benchmark in India's fight against terrorism, establishing a new standard and redefining the norm. He also categorically stated that the actions India would take if it were to be struck by terrorism again.
भारत की तीनों सेनाएं, हमारी एयरफोर्स, हमारी आर्मी और हमारी नेवी, हमारी बॉर्डर सिक्योरिटी फोर्स बीएसएफ, भारत के अर्धसैनिक बल लगातार अलर्ट पर है। सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक और एयर स्ट्राइक के बाद अब ऑपरेशन सिंदूर आतंक के खिलाफ भारत की नीति है। ऑपरेशन सिंदूर ने आतंक के खिलाफ लड़ाई में एक नई लकीर खींच दी है, एक नया पैमाना, न्यू नॉर्मल तय कर दिया है। पहला, भारत पर आतंकी हमला हुआ तो मुंह तोड़ जवाब दिया जाएगा। हम अपने तरीके से, अपनी शर्तों पर जवाब देकर रहेंगे। हर उस जगह जाकर कठोर कार्रवाई करेंगे जहां से आतंक की जड़ें निकलती हैं। दूसरा, कोई भी न्यूक्लियर ब्लैकमेल भारत नहीं सहेगा। न्यूक्लियर ब्लैकमेल की आड़ में पनप रहे आतंकी ठिकानों पर भारत सटीक और निर्णायक प्रहार करेगा। तीसरा, हम आतंक की सरपरस्त सरकार और आतंक के आकाओं को अलग अलग नहीं देखेंगे। ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के दौरान दुनिया ने पाकिस्तान का वो घिनौना सच फिर देखा है, जब मारे गए आतंकियों को विदाई देने पाकिस्तानी सेना के बड़े बड़े अफसर उमड़ पड़े। स्टेट स्पॉन्सर्ड टेररिज्म का ये बहुत बड़ा सबूत है।
Second round of talks between Director Generals of Military Operations of India and Pakistan was held on Monday evening. Issues related to continuing the commitment that both sides must not fire a single shot or initiate any aggressive and inimical action against each other were discussed. It was also agreed that both sides consider immediate measures to ensure troop reduction from the borders and forward areas. Akshay Dongre joins us with more. Akshay, good morning. Now, the second round of the talks between the DGMOs of India and Pakistan were held yesterday, and also the focus was on avoiding firing and aggressive acts. Get us more as to how do we understand what were the other highlights of the talks?
Well, Preeti, so as far as the DGMO level talks are concerned, one thing has been made very clear from the Indian side that the only thing that is going to be discussed with Pakistan is only going to be the cessation of hostilities, that is the ceasefire that has been implemented between the two countries as far as the escalations are concerned. In fact, India had stated that the only target for the armed forces is the terror hubs and terror camps, and it is not looking at targeting civilians or the Pakistani military. It remains true to its word even today. And as far as the DGMO level talks are concerned, it was also made sure that the talks will be only about ceasefire and nothing else, and not the Indus Water Treaty, not the ban on Pakistani nationals, not the flights that are not operating between the two countries or trade. So all of these major points that are actions by India against terrorism, they will continue to remain. So the only discussions that have happened between the DGMO at the DGMO level is the continuation of the last conversation and the continuation of the ceasefire that was implemented day before yesterday at 5 p.m.
All right, Akshay, we also had yesterday Prime Minister address the nation on Operation Sindoor, and he also talked of India's firm stance against terrorism and how it will not go unanswered. As a journalist, what is your reading of the situation at present with the DGMOs on one hand talking of following and focusing on avoiding firing and aggressive acts and agreeing to reduce troops at border areas? Should we understand that the situation is somewhat getting on the better sides?
Well, the situation is normalizing. Absolutely, it's normalizing. If you compare it to the situation that was there just a few days back, it was closing in on a full-blown war. And now, one thing is there: a war is never good for any economy, especially for a very robust and growing economy like India. It would have been a disadvantage for our country to fight a country that is surviving on IMF loans and World Bank loans. So Pakistan had nothing to lose, but India had a lot. So as far as the normalization is concerned, it is being observed in the at the LOC or the international border or the towns and cities in the neighboring areas. But it is also being monitored at the same time, so that we do not get any lax about the situation. The seriousness of situation is such that the forces will remain on high alert for a very long time. However, the situation seems to be normalizing a bit. Prime Minister, however, has already said that now any more act of terror will be an act of war. So that should be enough to make Pakistan understand where the situation is heading to.
All right, Akshay, we'll leave it here. Thank you so much for joining in with those details. And the borders along northern and western fronts of India remained relatively calm after days of air silence and blackouts. A semblance of normalcy was observed in border areas with markets teeming with people. Across the Kashmir Valley, markets opened and traffic returned to its normal level with no shelling being reported. People in Punjab's border areas feel relieved as tensions ease, markets are opening and locals hope for peace to continue. So up on your screens, we have the visuals from border towns of the country. Our correspondent also emphasized that situation is slowly turning to normalcy and it is better at present. We also had the DGMO talks between India and Pakistan, the second round of talks that was held yesterday, and both the sides focused on avoiding firing, aggressive acts, and also agreeing to reduce troops at the border areas. This has instilled a sense of confidence among the locals living in these border towns, and we can see markets opening, traffic plying on the roads, and situation is somewhat returning to normalcy with no shelling reported yesterday. In a short while from now, we'll have reporters joining us from border towns of the country. We are joined in by Ankush Sharma from Jammu, Vishal Baristo from Srinagar, and Lakshay Arya from Jaisalmer. Good morning, all of you. To begin with, I will come to you, Vishal, first. You're there in Srinagar. Tell us about how has the day begun. We tell our viewers that normalcy is slowly returning to the border towns of the country.
Well, absolutely. A very good morning to you, Preeti. Life is tiptoeing back to normalcy. The flights have started from Srinagar, and I'm given to understand that the first flight has already left for Delhi because one of our colleagues, a fellow journalist, has left for Delhi. So big relief for him and his family that he'll be safely back to his hometown. And yes, the schools and colleges are also opening, but the border areas in the schools and colleges in the border areas, which is not Srinagar, they will take some time to reopen. But Srinagar schools are opening, colleges are opening, so life is slowly returning back to normal, and it's a big relief for people here. Last night also Srinagar observed a quiet night and we had a good sleep there. So people are very happy, and I showed you 2 days back also the markets were opening. I'm here at Lal Chowk. It's too early in the morning because markets open at around 10 o'clock. So we'll be sending you visuals shortly about the schools and students, and we would also talk to them. But as of now, it's a big relief, and thanks to the efforts by our military and also the Prime Minister, who has been observing these, especially Operation Sindoor, and also all the activities across the border, the diplomatic efforts by the Indian government garnering all kinds of support against Pakistan, and our armed forces making it very difficult for Pakistan to venture into our territory or go for any kind of misadventure, I would say. So life is slowly returning back to normal, and it is not only Srinagar but also at other parts of the Union Territory as well. Preeti?
All right, from here I'll go across to our correspondent Ankush Sharma, who is there in Jammu. Ankush, you are there in Jammu, close to where Vishal Baristo is. You tell us, do you also, do you also second what Vishal says, that normalcy is slowly returning to Jammu and Kashmir?
Well, good morning, Preeti. And as you know, the situation is completely fine in Jammu region from last 3 days, and we have observed that the peace has returned in the region, and as well as the schools are also now reopening today, excluding the border areas, and the situation is completely normal here. The last night was very peaceful, and there is no such activities like the cross-border shelling or something else. And on the other hand, the border areas also reported a very peaceful night, and the security have increased in city outskirts as well, because to tackle any future threats, the security have increased in city outskirts. And one more thing, from Jammu airport is fully operational, but Air India and Indigo, as a precautionary measure, decided to cancel the flights from Jammu as well as today also. On the other hand, the people are very happy now, because the situation is becoming normal, and the normal life is returned. The life is back on the track, and all the businesses and establishments now open in the region. So the feedback we are receiving from the people across Jammu region, the people are saying that they are happy with the decision, and now the life is completely back on the track.
All right, I'll take that forward to Lakshay, who's joining us from Jaisalmer. Lakshay, what are you witnessing there? How has the day begun? And also get us a sense, an account of the previous night.
Good morning, Preeti. As well said by my fellows Vishal and Ankush, the things has get back to the normal. The life has been restored, the normalcy has been restored, and the peace has returned to the border districts across the country. Right, likewise, right in the Rajasthan, across the Jaisalmer, across the Bardmer, across the other border districts, the normalcy has returned. People are quite happy. Last night when the PM gave a message to the nation. I was there in the city center where people shared their views. People showed how confident they are for the PM, how confident they are for the armed forces. They shared their views that they have full support for the administration before, and they are supporting administration right now. For now, the establishments as well as the shops are open. There's a free movement right in the Jaisalmer. So not only the normalcy returned to the Jaisalmer, but also, as you well know, the Jaisalmer is quite known for its tourist places or for its tourist attractions. So it's believed that probably in some time the tourists will get back to the Jaisalmer, because the tourism have a much larger part in the economy of the Jaisalmer. So most probably, as the normalcy has returned to the Jaisalmer, the things are very normal. The shops and establishments are open. The market is open. There is a free movement. So most probably within coming weeks, the tourists will get back to Jaisalmer. Alongside the two important airports, that is the Nal airport of the Bikaner and Jaisalmer airport is included in the 32 airports that was issued in the notice by the Airport Authority of India. So things as came to normal. This morning was very peaceful. Last night there was no movement observed across the borderline of Rajasthan. So not only the normal life has get back on track, but also the people seem to be happy. They have shared their views that they have followed the administration and followed the advisories before as well. And even if now, if administration take any precautionary measure, they will follow that too. Moreover, right now the advisory and any information regarding the educational institutions or the examination has not came yet, but it's probably in coming days that educational institutes may get open. As in the Jodhpur, the DM has instructed that you can open the education institute, whether it's school, colleges or Anganwadi. And many restrictions right in nearby districts like Jodhpur and Bardmer has been waived off. So it's most probably that in coming days that other advisories, other restrictions may be waived off. But right now, some advisories regarding to the blackout and restrictions on the firecrackers has been maintained.
All right. From here, I'll go across to Vishal again. Vishal, are you telling us that the situation is returning to normalcy? Is there any change in instructions by the administration? Any new fresh instructions have been given with regard to safety of the locals there? Get us a sense of the security setup there.
Well, Preeti, security ever since it all started has always been very tight in the valley, and police along with Jammu and Kashmir police along with the Central Reserve Police Force and also the BSF, they are manning different locations and also the tourist spots. And let me also tell you that people have been advised not to panic. There is an app that has also been released, and any kind of activity which is found to be against anti-national should be reported to the authorities. This is the advisory by the authorities, and people have been advised not to go after what is floating in social media, because there are a lot of disturbing elements who are trying to disturb the normalcy and peace and tranquility in the valley. So an advisory has been issued that you should not follow all that is floating. You should have faith in the administration, in the police authorities and also in the security forces, because security forces are there guarding the borders. And meanwhile, here in the valley or in towns and cities, it is largely the CRPF, which is our paramilitary force, and also the Jammu and Kashmir police that are stationed and also manning the places from morning to night. Like here at the Lal Chowk, there is always a CRPF vehicle, CRPF personnel patrolling. and also important locations and strategic locations like ours. Doordarshan is monitored 24/7. There's a security which is there as always, not because of this tension, but otherwise also. But other places, the security has been beefed up, and the government, both at the UT and also at the center, are keeping a close vigil on any kind of activity which can disturb the normalcy in the valley.
All right, Vishal. At this point, Gurmeet Singh is joining us from Amritsar. Gurmeet, good morning. Get us the sense of how has the morning begun there. We have reporters joining us from different border towns of the country, and they tell us that the situation is slowly returning to normalcy. Added to that, the Prime Minister also addressed the nation yesterday, and he talked of the firm stance which India took against terrorism emanating from Pakistani soil. You get us more. To begin with, tell us how has the day begun there in Amritsar.
See, Preeti, at this point in time, what we are getting is that in Punjab specifically and in Amritsar, yesterday there was a blackout, and in addition to Amritsar, there are two other areas, Jalandhar and Hoshiarpur. There was a partial blackout, but it was due to the precautionary measures being taken by the administration. And right now, the very first thing that I would like to show you, the visuals of Amritsar at this point in time. This is the road which connects Jalandhar to Amritsar and then takes further it to Atari. And right now you can see a lot of people are commuting on this road, and most of the people are going towards their offices, their workstations and other businesses. So most of the traders, we have seen yesterday also that they have opened up their shops, and yesterday we saw that markets also opened up, and a lot of people went for shopping, and there was a lot of hustle bustle in market. And at this point in time, the very first thing that the blackout was done just as a precautionary measure. It has been emphasized by the administration that whenever the blackout is imposed, the people should stay indoors, as well as they should avoid traveling on roads at that point in time. Secondly, if we talk about the educational institutions, then the schools in the border areas, specifically Punjab's Amritsar, Pathankot, Firozpur, Taran Taran and Fazilka, in all these areas the schools were closed, and today also the schools and educational institutions are closed, but rest of the Punjab, the schools are opened up, and the examinations and the session is going as per the academic schedule. On the other side, if we talk about the people, few people we have heard that who were living in the border areas, they moved to the safer zones. They are also returning to their home, their residence at the border areas. In addition to this, the administration of various border districts have appealed to the people, if they see any object, any suspicious object in sky, so they should report it to the police administration as well as to the administration, local district administration. So right now what we are getting that the security forces as well as the district administration is on constant vigil, and people are returning to their offices, and the life is becoming normal as usual.
All right, Gurmeet, thank you so much for joining us with those details. Thank you, Vishal from Srinagar, and Akshay from Jammu, and also Lakshay, who joined us from Jaisalmer. All of our reporters stationed at these border towns in the country tell us that the situation is returning to normalcy. However, the administration has maintained that strict vigil and caution is still in place, but at present the situation is getting better. Ever since the conversation between the two DGMOs and also the Prime Minister yesterday addressing the nation has instilled confidence in the countrymen. Up next, we're heading for a short break. You're watching DD India News Hour. But after the break, US President Donald Trump hints at traveling to Turkey for potential peace talks between Ukraine and Russia. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is sworn in for the second term following a sweeping electoral victory. New faces make it to the cabinet. As a fallout of killing of a prominent militia leader, armed clashes erupt across the Libyan capital, Tripoli. Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour. A quick relook at the top stories now. Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterates his government's stated policy that talks and terror cannot go hand in hand, says Operation Sindoor now new normal in India's fight against terror. Consensus reached on restoring peace at the DGMO level talks between India and Pakistan. Both sides to consider immediate measures while life limping back to normalcy at border towns of India. Hamas releases last living U.S. Israeli hostage Aiden Alexander in an effort to reach ceasefire in Gaza. U.S. President Trump is on a historic tour of the Gulf nations, reaches Saudi Arabia, talks on oil, trade and Russia-Ukraine crisis on the table. Iran warns Europeans of irreversible consequences after U.S. announces new sanctions over its nuclear program. Israeli-American hostage Aiden Alexander has been reunited with his family in Israel after being held captive by Hamas in Gaza for 19 months. The 21-year-old had been serving in the Israeli army on the border of Gaza when he was captured by Hamas on 7th of October 2023. Alexander was the last living hostage in Gaza with American citizenship. He is also the first hostage to be freed by Hamas since Israel restarted its military offensive on 18th of March. After a 2-month ceasefire came to an end. Alexander was freed during a brief pause in fighting in Gaza, but there was no deal on a wider truce or hostage releases as monitors warned of famine in the devastated enclave. Tears of joy at the released Israeli-American hostage, Alexander reunited with his family and friends. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hails the return of the U.S. Israeli captive, saying the return of Israeli hostage Aiden Alexander was a very emotional moment. Netanyahu thanked the diplomatic efforts of Trump and stated Israel's military pressure and Trump's political pressure were a winning formula.
This is a very emotional moment. Aiden Alexander has returned home. We embrace him and his family. This was achieved thanks to a military pressure and the diplomatic pressure exerted by President Trump. This combination is a winning formula. I spoke today with President Trump. He told me I'm committed to Israel. I'm committed to continuing to work in close coordination with you to achieve all our war objectives, to release all the hostages and to defeat Hamas. These goals go hand in hand. They are interconnected.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres welcomed the release of Israeli-American hostage Aiden Alexander. The UN chief, in a statement read by US spokesperson, called for an immediate permanent ceasefire and unconditional release of all the remaining hostages.
The Secretary General is relieved, profoundly relieved that Mr. Alexander has been freed and is now returning to his family after this harrowing ordeal. The Secretary General renews his urgent call for an immediate permanent ceasefire and an immediate and unconditional release of all remaining hostages. Hostages must be treated humanely and with dignity. He calls on all parties to immediately ensure the rapid, the unhindered, and the safe humanitarian relief, including the delivery of critical services for all civilians in need. Aid in Gaza and anywhere around the world is not negotiable.
In the U.S., hundreds gathered in Tennessee, New Jersey on Monday to celebrate the long-awaited release of Aiden Alexander. The crowd, many wearing shirts with Alexander's name and waving Israeli and American flags, erupted in cheer as they saw the first images of him being handed over to the Red Cross and then to the IDF. A native of Tennessee and a soldier in the Israel Defense Forces, Alexander was abducted on October 7, 2023 and spent 584 days in captivity before being freed and returned to Israel. U.S. President Donald Trump has departed for Saudi Arabia, kicking off what he describes as a historic tour of the Gulf nations. The trip aims to blend urgent diplomatic efforts with major commercial deals across defense, energy and technology. High on the agenda are the talks on escalating Gaza crisis and growing tensions with Iran. Trump is expected to push for stronger regional cooperation to counter Iran's influence and to seek solution to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. In addition to Saudi Arabia, Trump will visit Qatar and the United Arab Emirates, countries pivotal to U.S. strategic interests. The tour also serves as a platform to finalize significant business agreements, potentially worth billions of dollars. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department has authorized a $1.4 billion arms sale to the United Arab Emirates just days ahead of former President Donald Trump's visit to the Gulf. The package includes 6 CH-47F Chinook helicopters valued at $1.32 billion alongside $130 million in F-16 fighter jet components. According to the U.S. officials, the deal supports American foreign policy and strengthens the strategic alliance with the UAE. The equipment is expected to bolster the UAE's capabilities in humanitarian aid, search and rescue, disaster relief and counter-terrorism operations. Trump's visit to the region will include stops in Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the UAE, where discussions will focus on Iran, Gaza, diplomacy and high-value commercial partnerships, among others. U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday brushed aside ethical concerns over his decision to accept a $400 million luxury jet from the Qatari royal family, calling it stupid to reject such a generous offer. The customized Boeing 747-8, intended to serve as a future Air Force One, would be among the most valuable gifts ever received by the U.S. government. Critics, including Democrats and government ethics watchdogs, warned the move poses a serious conflict of interest. Trump said the plane would eventually be donated to his presidential library and not used for personal purposes after his presidency. He framed the gift as a show of gratitude from Qatar for U.S. defense support in the region and expressed frustration over Boeing's delays in delivering Air Force One. White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt stated legal arrangements with the Defense Department are ongoing and the administration is unconcerned about possible expectations from Qatar in return. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Monday that he is considering traveling to Turkey for potential peace talks between Ukraine and Russia, though the Kremlin has not confirmed whether President Putin will attend the talks. Speaking to reporters at the White House before departing for a trip to Gulf nations, Trump said he was thinking about making the trip. Turkish President Erdogan has offered to host the talks, urging both sides to take advantage of what he called a window of opportunity for peace. Putin floated the idea of direct meeting in response to a ceasefire proposal from Kyiv, which Ukraine says Moscow has ignored. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Monday that he wants U.S. counterpart Donald Trump to join peace talks with Russia in Turkey, but the Kremlin was silent about whether Russian President Vladimir Putin would attend. In his nightly video address, Zelensky said that he is ready for direct and substantive negotiations with Putin.
Ukraine has always supported diplomacy. I am ready to be in Turkey. Unfortunately, the world still has not received a clear response from Russia regarding numerous proposals for a ceasefire. Russian shelling continue. President Erdogan expressed full readiness to host the meeting. It is important that President Trump fully supported the meeting and we would like him to find the opportunity to be in Turkey.
The United States has announced new sanctions on Monday against Iran over its nuclear program, despite ongoing negotiations between the two countries over the sensitive issue. The latest sanctions target 3 Iranian citizens and an Iranian entity with links to Tehran's Organization of Defensive Innovation and Research. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said in a statement that Iran is the only country in the world without nuclear weapons that enriches uranium to 60% purity. That level far exceeds the 3.67% maximum set under 2015 nuclear deal, which U.S. President Donald Trump exited during his first term. Building a nuclear weapon requires 90% enrichment. The United States announced the new sanctions a day after a 4th round of talks with Iran concluded. No major breakthrough was announced, but in fact after the talks, but both sides voiced cautious optimism. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was sworn in for a second term on Tuesday following a sweeping electoral victory that delivered the largest centre-left Labour government since Australia's federation in 1901 Albanese credited the win to voter frustration over global instability, including fallout from U.S. President Donald Trump's policies. Labour secured at least 92 of 150 seats in the House of Representatives, with final results still pending. The key cabinet roles such as Treasurer, Defence and Foreign Affairs remain unchanged, while new appointments include Michelle Rowland as Attorney General and Tanya Pilbazak as Social Services Minister. The opposition Liberal Party elected Susan Ley as its first female leader after losing heavily in urban areas to climate and equality-focused independence. Albanese is scheduled to visit Indonesia and attend the inauguration mass of Pope Leo XIV in Rome, where he will meet global leaders including EU chief Ursula von der Leyen to discuss trade and economic ties. Armed clashes erupted across the Libyan capital after reports surfaced of killing of Abdul Ghani Kikli, a prominent militia leader known as Ghaniva. Exchange of heavy gunfiring was seen in Tripoli flares as fighting intensified in several neighborhoods, including Abu Salim and Saleh Edin. In response to the outbreak of violence, Libya's Interior Ministry issued a public advisory urging residents to remain indoors. The warning triggered panic on the streets, with drivers reportedly speeding and honking as they scrambled to return home. By early Tuesday, Defence Ministry had regained full control of Abu Salim neighbourhood, though the situation on the ground remains volatile. The United Nations has issued an urgent call for de-escalation following intense armed clashes that broke out in Libya's capital, Tripoli. The UN support mission in Libya expressed deep concern over the deteriorating security situation, stating it was alarmed by the unfolding security situation in Tripoli, with intense fighting with heavy weaponry in densely populated civilian areas. In a statement earlier on Tuesday, the UN support mission in Libya said that it was alarmed by the unfolding security situation in Tripoli, with intense fighting with heavy weaponry in densely populated civilian areas. The top diplomats from Kenya and the Dominican Republic met in Santo Domingo on Monday and called on international community to fulfill and expand its promised funding for the UN-backed security mission in neighboring Haiti. Dominican Foreign Minister Roberto Alvarez and his Kenyan counterpart Musalia Mudavadi warned that the multinational security support mission in Haiti is struggling to fight the country's worsening gang violence effectively due to the lack of funding and logistical support. Both ministers urged the international community to fulfill the contributions offered and even increase them so that the mission can fully operate. Kenya deployed officers to the multinational security support mission in June 2024. The mission includes around 1,000 personnel, with approximately 75% from Kenya. A group of 49 white South Africans arrived in the United States on Monday after being granted refugee status under a controversial policy introduced by former president, introduced by the U.S. president. The chartered flight from Johannesburg landed at Washington, marking the first formal arrival of white South Africans admitted on the claims of racial persecution. The individuals were accepted under a Trump-era directive that prioritized white South African applicants while severely restricting refugee admissions from predominantly non-white countries. Treating white South Africans as refugees fleeing oppression has drawn a mixture of alarm and ridicule by South African authorities, who say the Trump administration has waded into a domestic issue it does not understand.
You can put them in foreign soil.
In Philippines, a volcano in the central region erupted on Tuesday morning, sending a massive grey plume of ash up about 3 kilometers into the sky and launching ballistic projectiles. According to the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, a moderately explosive eruption occurred at the summit crater of Canlaon volcano on Monday, adding that it lasted 5 minutes. A level 3 alert out of a scale of 5 put in place during an eruption in December remained unchanged on Tuesday, as officials highlighted an existing 6-kilometer evacuation radius. Canlaon volcano, one of the 24 active volcanoes in the Southeast Asian nation, has had several eruptions in the past century, the most recent of which happened last month. The 2569th Buddha Jayanti, commemorating the birth, enlightenment and parinirvana of Lord Buddha, was celebrated across Nepal with great zeal and reverence on Tuesday. People took Prabhat Feri on the occasion in various localities of Kathmandu Valley. President of Nepal, Ramchandra Paudel, conducted worship at Lakhang Monastery of Bodha, Kathmandu on the occasion of the Buddha Jayanti on Monday. The Buddhist devotees thronged the monastery since early morning and were singing folk songs, chanting prayers and lighting butter lamps. In more stories making it to the headlines from across the world, thousands of glowing lanterns lit up the night sky above Borobudur temple as Indonesian Buddhists gathered to celebrate Vesak Day, one of the most sacred days in the Buddhist calendar. The iconic ceremony, held at the world's largest Buddhist temple in central Java, drew tens of thousands of devotees and visitors from around Indonesia and abroad. Across Sri Lanka, streets and temples came alive in a blaze of color and light as millions of Sri Lankans marked Vesak Day, the most sacred day in the Buddhist calendar, commemorating the birth, enlightenment and passing away of Lord Buddha. Temples overflowed with devotees offering flowers, lighting oil lamps and engaging in prayer and meditation. Let's turn focus to updates from the world of business. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday signed an executive order asking drug makers to voluntarily reduce the prices of key medicines in the United States. The order gives drug makers price targets in the next 30 days and will take further action to lower the prices if those companies do not make significant progress towards those goals within 6 months of the order being signed. Trump told a press conference that the government would impose tariffs on companies if the prices in the U.S. did not match those in other countries, and said that he was seeking cuts of between 59% to 90%. Trump's order directs the government to consider facilitating direct-to-consumer purchasing programs that would sell drugs at prices other countries pay.
The United States will no longer subsidize the health care of foreign countries, which is what we were doing. We're subsidizing others' health care. Countries where they paid a small fraction of what, for the same drug, that what we pay many, many times more for. And will no longer tolerate profiteering and price gouging from Big Pharma. But again, it was really the countries that forced Big Pharma to do things that, frankly, I'm not sure they really felt comfortable doing. But they've gotten away with it, these countries. European Union has been brutal.
The U.S. and China have agreed to temporarily slash reciprocal tariffs as the world's two biggest economies seek to end a damaging trading war that has stoked fears of recession and roiled financial markets. The U.S. will cut extra tariffs it imposed on Chinese imports in April this year to 30% from 145%, and Chinese duties on U.S. imports will fall to 10% from 125%. The new measures are effective for 90 days.
The United States and China announced a pause on the tit-for-tat tariffs for 90 days on Monday, de-escalating the trade war that has been taking the global financial markets on a roller coaster ride, and it raised fears of a global economic downturn. The two countries, which would now trade on rates before Trump announced fresh set of high tariffs soon after he came to power. The two nations also agreed to drastically slash and rationalize the trade tariffs between the two trading partners over the next 90 days. After their first talks since U.S. President Donald Trump launched his trade war, the world's two biggest economies agreed in a joint statement to bring their triple-digit tariffs down to two figures and continue negotiations. As per the deal, the United States will cut extra tariffs it imposed on Chinese imports in April this year to 30% from 145%, and Chinese duties on U.S. imports will fall to 10% from 125%.
We have reached an agreement on a 90-day pause and substantially moves down the tariff levels. Both sides on the reciprocal tariffs will move their tariffs down 115%. We had very robust discussions. Both sides show great respect.
Trump had imposed duties of 145% on imports from China last month, compared to 10% for other countries in the global tariff blitz he launched. Beijing hit back with duties of 125% on US goods. In their joint statement, the two sides agreed to establish a mechanism to continue discussions about economic and trade relations. Chinese Vice Premier He Lifang said that the world's two biggest economies need to find ways to properly resolve issues through equal-footed dialogue and consultation.
The world's two biggest economies need to find way to properly resolve issues through equal-footed dialogues and consultation.
The trade dispute between Washington and Beijing has rocked financial markets, eroding billions of dollars. Also, the situation sparked fears the tariff would rekindle inflation and cause a global economic downturn. It had brought nearly $600 billion in two-way trade to a standstill, disrupting supply chains, sparking fears of stagflation, and triggering some layoffs. Bureau Report, DD India.
U.S. President Donald Trump said that he expects to speak to China's President Xi Jinping at the end of the week after an agreement to reduce tit-for-tat tariffs.
The talks in Geneva were very friendly. The relationship is very good. We're not looking to hurt China. China was being hurt very badly. They were closing up factories. They were having a lot of unrest. And they were very happy to be able to do something with us. And the relationship is very, very good. I'll speak to President Xi maybe at the end of the week. We have some other things we're doing.
Wall Street's three major indices rallied sharply on Monday, with the S&P 500 hitting its highest level since early March, as the U.S.-China agreement to temporarily slash tariffs brought some hopes for the easing of a global trade war, which U.S. President Donald Trump ignited in early April. Investors showed some relief by favoring riskier assets and turning away from more defensive bets, but they were still left waiting for clarity on whether tariffs, or where tariffs would ultimately settle. The S&P 500 gained 184.28 points, while the Nasdaq Composite gained 779.43 points. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 1,160.72 points. Global financial markets are rallying after the U.S. and China agreed to a 90-day trade truce, signaling a major step towards easing global tensions. Stocks surged, with Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index soaring 3%, while Wall Street posted strong gains. Nasdaq jumped 4.4%, the S&P 500 rose 3.3%, and the Dow Jones closed up 2.8%. In Europe, Paris's CAC 40 led with a 1.4% rise, boosted by a 7% surge in luxury goods giant LVMH. Oil prices climbed, with Brent crude up 1.6% and WTI gaining 3.2%. The US dollar strengthened against major currencies, reflecting renewed investor confidence. The rally followed successful negotiations in Geneva, where the US agreed to reduce tariffs on Chinese goods to 30%, with China cutting its levies to 10% for 90 days starting May 14th. Analysts welcomed the de-escalation but warned of continued volatility, with markets still vulnerable to setbacks in trade talks and upcoming US economic data on inflation and retail sales. The British government suffered a setback to its plans to make it easier for AI companies to access data, as the House of Lords backed more protection for content creators on Monday. The Labour government under Prime Minister Keir Starmer wants to introduce a copyright exception for commercial generative AI training with its Data Use and Access Bill. Under the proposed law, companies developing AI models would not need permission from creatives to access certain content, a plan that has provoked a fierce backlash in the cultural sector. More than 400 artists and other creators have signed an open letter calling for the plans to be scrapped. Starmer in January unveiled an action plan to make the UK the world leader in artificial intelligence and spark Britain's flagging economy, promising flexible regulations. The bill will now be sent back to the House of Commons, the lower house of Parliament, for further debate. Let's talk of sports now, getting you updates from the world of cricket. The Board of Control for Cricket in India on Monday announced that Indian Premier League 2025 will resume on May 17th. After a week-long suspension due to the escalating conflict between India and Pakistan, the BCCI has announced the revised schedule. The IPL Governing Council took the decision to suspend the tournament last Friday after consulting both franchisees and the players. Now, the IPL still has 12 group matches left, which will be played in the cities of Bengaluru, Jaipur, Delhi, Lucknow, Mumbai and Ahmedabad. The league will restart on Saturday with Kolkata Knight Riders locking horns with Royal Challengers Bangalore, with the final to take place on 3rd of June. The scenic hill town of Ooty was abuzz with excitement on Tuesday as the prestigious All Breeds Dog Show entered its second day, drawing dog enthusiasts from across the country. Take a look. That's it in this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms, and you can download the respective QR codes. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.